The amber sun cast long shadows over the dusty streets of Chico, California, as Margaret Eleanor Preston stepped off the stagecoach, her heart pounding against her ribs like a hammer on an anvil. She clutched the worn photograph in her gloved hand, the same one she had sent to Adam Holcomb 6 months prior, a portrait taken nearly 8 years ago when she was 22. Not the 30-year-old woman who now stood trembling on unfamiliar soil. The year was 1878, and Margaret, who had always gone by her middle name Eleanor, had traveled all the way from Boston to marry a man who was expecting someone else entirely. Eleanor smoothed her travel-worn skirt and adjusted her bonnet, scanning the crowd for the man who had described himself as tall as a pine tree with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of a ranch. Her gaze settled on a rugged-looking man standing apart from the others, his eyes searching the faces of the arriving passengers with an intensity that made her stomach twist into knots. Adam Holcomb had been corresponding with Eleanor for months, his letters filled with dreams of building a life together on his growing cattle ranch just outside Chico. His penmanship was surprisingly elegant for a cowboy, his words thoughtful and kind. But Eleanor had been dishonest from the start, sending a photograph that no longer represented the woman she had become. The lines around her eyes had deepened with years of working as a schoolteacher in Boston. Her once vibrant auburn hair now bore streaks of silver at the temples, not entirely noticeable beneath her bonnet, but impossible to hide forever. She had considered backing out countless times, but after her father's death left her penniless, and her school closed due to budget constraints, Eleanor had few options left. Adam spotted her then, his gaze lingering on her face with an expression she couldn't quite read. He approached slowly, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. His eyes were the color of the California sky, a clear, striking blue that seemed to look straight through to her soul. "Miss Preston?" he asked, his voice deep and rich like good soil. Eleanor nodded, her throat suddenly dry. "Mr. Holcomb, I presume," he smiled then, a gentle curve of his lips that softened his weathered features. "Adam, please." He glanced down at the small carpetbag at her feet. "Is this all your luggage?" "The rest is still on the coach," she admitted, gesturing toward the larger trunk being unloaded by the driver. "I'm afraid I couldn't bear to part with my books." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, recognition, perhaps, of the woman he'd come to know through their letters. "A teacher needs her tools," he said simply, then moved to help with her trunk. Eleanor watched him lift the heavy container with ease, the muscles in his forearms rippling beneath his rolled-up shirt sleeves. At 34, Adam Holcomb was every bit the strong, capable rancher he had described himself to be. But would he still want her when he realized she wasn't the youthful woman in the photograph? As they walked toward his wagon, Eleanor gathered her courage. "Mr. Holcomb, Adam, there's something I need to tell you." He turned to look at her, his expression open and attentive. "The photograph I sent you, it was taken some years ago." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "I'm 30 now, not the young woman you were expecting." Adam's eyes studied her face for a long moment, taking in the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the subtle silvering of her hair visible now as the breeze had shifted her bonnet. Then, to Eleanor's surprise, he smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "Miss Preston, where I come from, beauty deepens with every year, like the rings of a tree." He set her trunk in the back of his wagon and offered his hand to help her up onto the seat. A face that has lived and learned has far more to say than one that's merely pretty. Relief washed over Eleanor like a cool rain after a drought, but uncertainty still lingered. "You're not disappointed. The woman I've been writing to for these past months has shown me her mind and her heart," Adam replied, climbing up beside her and taking the reins. "Those don't age like a photograph, Miss Preston. They grow richer." As the wagon pulled away from the bustling town center, Eleanor allowed herself to breathe fully for the first time since stepping off the stagecoach. Perhaps there was hope for her new beginning after all. The journey to Adam's ranch took them through rolling golden hills dotted with oak trees. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in a honeyed glow, and Eleanor found herself captivated by the landscape, so different from Boston's crowded streets and brick buildings. "It's beautiful," she murmured, taking in the expansive sky overhead. "Different from what you're used to," Adam observed. "Yes, but in the most magnificent way." She turned to look at him. "Your letters described it well, but seeing it is something else entirely." Adam's expression softened. "Wait until you see the sunset from the front porch, like God himself is painting the sky just for us." The us hung between them, a tentative possibility of a shared future. "Tell me about your journey," Adam said after a comfortable silence. "Was it very difficult?" Eleanor laughed softly. "If by difficult you mean being crammed into a stagecoach with a traveling salesman who smelled of pomade and a woman who insisted on sharing every detail of her 8 grandchildren's lives, then yes, it was rather challenging." Adam chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. "You've a good sense of humor, Miss Preston. That'll serve you well out here. Please call me Eleanor," she said. "And what does one need a sense of humor for in California?" "Well, for starters, there's the matter of my cooking," Adam replied with a self-deprecating smile. "I warn you now, my biscuits have been known to double as doorstops." Eleanor laughed again, feeling some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "Then it's fortunate I'm quite handy in the kitchen. Though I should warn you, my Boston recipes might need some adaptation for ranch life." "I look forward to it," Adam said, his gaze briefly meeting hers. "To be honest, I've been living on beans and coffee for so long I'd consider shoe leather an improvement if it was served on a proper plate." As they rounded a bend in the road, a sprawling ranch came into view. A modest but well-built house stood proudly against the backdrop of the hills, with several outbuildings and corrals spread out behind it. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and horses lifted their heads in curiosity as the wagon approached. "Holcomb Ranch," Adam announced with quiet pride. "Not the biggest spread in Butte County, but it's growing. Started with just 10 acres and a dream 6 years ago." Eleanor took in the scene before her, the land that could become her home, the life so different from anything she had known. "It's wonderful, Adam, truly." As they pulled up to the house, a large dog bounded toward them, barking enthusiastically. Adam brought the wagon to a halt and called out, "Settle down, Buck. We've got company." The dog, a mix of breeds with a predominantly shepherd appearance, obediently sat beside the wagon, his tail sweeping the dusty ground in broad, happy arcs. "Buck's been with me since he was a pup," Adam explained as he hopped down from the wagon. "Best cattle dog in the county and decent company on cold nights." He came around to offer Eleanor his hand, and she accepted it, acutely aware of the strength in his calloused palm as he helped her down. Her boots had barely touched the ground when Buck approached, sniffing her skirts with undisguised curiosity. "He approves of most people," Adam said with a smile, "but his opinion matters to me." Eleanor cautiously extended her hand for the dog to sniff. "Hello, Buck." "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." Buck responded by licking her fingers, then looking up at Adam as if to say, "She'll do." Adam laughed. High praise from him. He gathered Eleanor's trunk from the wagon bed. "Let me show you inside. It's not fancy, but it's solid. Built it myself with some help from neighbors." The house was indeed modest but surprisingly comfortable. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a sturdy table, a stone fireplace, and two well-worn but clean armchairs. Bookshelves lined one wall, not full, but containing more volumes than Eleanor would have expected from a rancher. "Your books," she remarked, moving closer to examine the titles. "A man needs something to occupy his mind during the long winter evenings," Adam replied, setting her trunk down. "Though I admit, my collection is humble compared to what I imagine you're used to." Eleanor ran her fingers along the spine's works by Dickens, Twain, some practical manuals on ranching and animal husbandry, and surprisingly, several volumes of poetry. "You never mentioned you were a reader of Wordsworth." A faint blush colored Adam's tanned cheeks. Seemed a bit soft for Cowboy correspondence. The admission touched Eleanor deeply. Here was another layer to the man she had come to know through paper and ink. "I find it rather wonderful," she said honestly. Adam cleared his throat, suddenly appearing slightly embarrassed. "There's a small room off the back I've prepared for you. It's not much, but I thought, well, until we decide if we're suited." Eleanor appreciated his consideration. "Thank you. That's very thoughtful." He showed her to a small but clean bedroom with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window that overlooked the western hills. Simple muslin curtains fluttered in the breeze, and a small vase of wildflowers sat on the windowsill. "The flowers are a nice touch," Eleanor said, genuinely moved by the gesture. "Mrs. Abernathy from the neighboring ranch suggested it, said a lady appreciates such things." Adam shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I'll bring your trunk in and leave you to settle. Supper won't be fancy, just some stew I put on this morning. Should be ready soon." After Adam left, Eleanor sank onto the edge of the bed, the reality of her situation finally hitting her full force. She had traveled across the country to marry a man she knew only through letters. She had been dishonest about her age. And now she was here in his home, with no way back if things didn't work out. But there was kindness in Adam Holcomb's eyes, and thoughtfulness in the flowers on her windowsill. Perhaps this leap of faith wasn't as reckless as it had seemed in Boston. Eleanor unpacked the essentials from her trunk: a nightgown, a change of clothes for tomorrow, her hairbrush and toiletries. She washed her face and hands in the basin Adam had provided, then took a deep breath and rejoined him in the main room. Adam was setting the table, his movements efficient despite the domestic task being clearly unfamiliar. He looked up when she entered, his expression warming. "Feel better after your journey? Much thank you." She moved to help him, reaching for the plates he was arranging. Their hands brushed briefly, and Eleanor felt a curious flutter in her stomach. "May I help with anything?" "You're my guest tonight," Adam insisted. "Plenty of time for work tomorrow if you're still of a mind to stay." The reminder of their arrangement hung in the air between them. They would have a month to decide if they suited one another enough for marriage, as they had agreed in their letters. Supper was simple, but surprisingly tasty: a hearty beef stew with vegetables from Adam's garden, and fresh bread he'd purchased in town that morning in anticipation of her arrival. They ate in a comfortable silence for a while before Adam spoke. "I know this is all very different from Boston," he said, his eyes meeting hers across the table. "It's a hard life out here sometimes, lonely too." Eleanor considered her response carefully. Boston had its own hardships. Different ones perhaps, but no less real. "After my father died, I found myself quite alone in the world. The school where I taught closed due to lack of funds. At 30, with no family and no prospects." She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Adam. And loneliness can find you anywhere, even in a city full of people." Adam nodded slowly. "That's the truth of it." He hesitated, then added, "In your letters you mentioned wanting children. At 30, some might say that I'm past my prime." Eleanor finished for him, her chin lifting slightly. Perhaps, but I'm healthy and strong. My mother had my younger brother at 35 and both thrived. I didn't mean to offend, Adam said quickly. Only that life out here is demanding, childbearing too. I understand your concerns, Eleanor replied. They're practical ones. But I believe I'm equal to the challenge, should we decide to proceed with our arrangement. Adam studied her for a long moment, then smiled a genuine, warm expression that transformed his weathered features. I believe you might be at that. After supper, they sat on the front porch as Adam had promised, watching the spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. Buck lay at their feet, occasionally thumping his tail when one of them shifted in their chairs. You were right about the sunset, Eleanor said softly. It's magnificent. Different every night, Adam replied, like getting a new painting to admire. Eleanor glanced at him, seeing his profile illuminated by the fading light. There was a gentleness to him that hadn't been immediately apparent, a thoughtfulness that complemented his obvious strength and capability. Adam, she began, I want to apologize again for the photograph. It wasn't honest of me. He turned to look at her, his expression serious but kind. Eleanor, when I placed that advertisement for a bride, I wasn't looking for a pretty face to hang on my arm. I was looking for a partner, someone with enough courage and character to leave everything familiar behind and build something new. He gestured toward the darkening land around them. This ranch needs more than just my two hands to grow into what it could be. It needs a heart and mind to match. His words warmed her more than any compliment about her appearance could have. And do you think I might suit those requirements? Adam's smile returned. From your letters, I'd say you've got more courage and sense than most men I know. As for the rest, well, that's what this month is for, isn't it? To discover if we suit. Eleanor nodded, appreciating his honesty. Yes, it is. They sat in comfortable silence as the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the sky. Despite her fatigue from the journey, Eleanor felt more at peace than she had in months. Whatever came next, she had made it this far, from spinster schoolteacher to potential rancher's wife. The thought made her smile. What's that smile for? Adam asked, noticing her expression in the gathering dusk. Just thinking about how life takes unexpected turns, she replied. A year ago, I never would have imagined myself sitting on a porch in California, contemplating marriage to a cattle rancher. Adam chuckled. And I never imagined discussing Wordsworth with a Boston schoolteacher on my front porch. Life does have its surprises. As the night air grew cooler, Adam stood and offered Eleanor his hand. You must be tired after your journey. Best get some rest, ranch life starts early. Eleanor accepted his hand and rose, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. In the silvery moonlight, Adam's features were softer, his eyes reflecting the stars above. For a brief moment she thought he might lean in closer, but instead he stepped back respectfully. Good night, Eleanor, he said, his voice slightly deeper than before. I'm glad you're here. As am I, Adam, she replied, meaning it more than she had expected to. Good night. In her small room, Eleanor changed into her nightgown and brushed out her hair, reflecting on her first day in Chico. Adam Holcomb was not what she had expected. He was better in many ways, more thoughtful, more educated than the rough cowboy she had imagined. His acceptance of her age had lifted a tremendous weight from her shoulders, yet uncertainty still lingered. A month was not very long to decide on spending a lifetime together. And while Adam seemed kind and reasonable, Eleanor knew that living day to day with someone revealed truths that letters could never convey. As she slipped beneath the clean, crisp sheets, Eleanor thought about the photograph still tucked in her carpet bag, the younger version of herself, smiling confidently at a future she couldn't have predicted. Perhaps it was time to put that image away and embrace the woman she had become 30 years old, with silver threading her hair and lines beginning to mark her face, but wiser and stronger than she had ever been at 22. With that resolution in her heart, Eleanor closed her eyes and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep, lulled by the unfamiliar sounds of the California night crickets chirping, the distant lowing of cattle, and the soft whisper of the wind through the oak trees outside her window. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee wafting through the house. Eleanor dressed quickly in a practical blue dress, pinned her hair in a simple knot, and made her way to the main room. Adam was already up, stoking the fire in the cookstove and setting a cast iron pan on to heat. "Good morning," she said, smoothing her skirt self-consciously. Adam turned, a genuine smile lighting his face when he saw her. "Good morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Eleanor admitted. "Something about the country air, perhaps, or the clear conscience of honest folk," Adam replied, then quickly added, "Not that Boston doesn't have its share of those too." Eleanor laughed. "Indeed it does, though perhaps with more starched collars." She moved to the stove. "May I help with breakfast?" Adam hesitated. "I wouldn't want to presume, Adam," Eleanor said gently. "If I'm to consider becoming your wife, I should hardly stand idle while you cook. Besides, you warned me about your biscuits yesterday." That earned her another smile. "Fair point. The flour's in that bin there if you're of a mind to show me how it's done properly." They worked together companionably, Adam frying eggs and bacon while Eleanor mixed and rolled out biscuit dough. The domesticity of it felt surprisingly natural, as if they had been sharing a kitchen for years rather than hours. "What does your day usually entail?" Eleanor asked as she cut the dough into rounds. "Depends on the season," Adam replied, expertly flipping the bacon. "This time of year, I'm checking fence lines, moving cattle to fresh pasture, breaking the young horses. Got 3 hands who help with the bigger jobs they'll be by later this morning." "And will they expect me to feed them too?" Eleanor teased. Adam looked momentarily concerned. "I hadn't thought they usually fend for themselves, but now that you're here, perhaps they'll expect." "I wouldn't want to burden you," Eleanor laughed softly. "I was joking, Adam, but I would be happy to prepare meals for your men if that's customary. I came here to be useful after all." Relief washed over his face. Not customary, but they wouldn't turn down a decent meal. Samuel can burn water just by looking at it, and the Wilkins brothers live on jerky and beans when left to their own devices. As they sat down to breakfast, Eleanor marveled at how quickly she was adapting to this new routine. The biscuits had turned out light and flaky, earning appreciative murmurs from Adam, and the eggs and bacon were perfectly cooked. "What will you do today?" Adam asked between bites. "I'd be happy to show you around the ranch if you'd like." Eleanor nodded eagerly. "I would love that, and perhaps you could show me the garden as well. In my letters, I mentioned wanting to grow vegetables and herbs. My mother had quite a green thumb, though I'm afraid mine has been untested in Boston's boarding houses." "The garden's small but productive," Adam replied. "Mostly practical things: potatoes, beans, carrots. There's room to expand it, though. Previous owner's wife had flowers too, I'm told, but they've long since gone wild." After breakfast, Adam gave Eleanor a tour of the ranch house, showing her the root cellar, the small pantry, and the storage room where he kept supplies and tools. The house was larger than it had first appeared, with an unfinished upper floor that Adam explained he had intended to complete. When the need arose, a delicate reference to the possibility of children someday. Outside, the ranch sprawled in all directions, bathed in morning sunlight. Adam proudly showed Eleanor the barn where he kept his prized horses, the chicken coop where a dozen hens scratched and clucked, and the small but well-tended garden plot. "It's all so wonderfully organized," Eleanor remarked, genuinely impressed by what Adam had built with his own hands. "Had to be," Adam replied, a hint of his past hardships in his voice. "When you start with nothing, you learn to make every nail and board count." As they walked toward the corral where several horses watched them curiously, Eleanor asked, "Were you always a rancher?" Adam shook his head. "Started as a hand on other men's spreads. Worked my way up, saved every penny. Fought in the war, that's where I met Samuel, my foreman. When we came back, land out here was cheap if you were willing to work it." He paused, looking out over his property. "Took me 10 years to save enough for this place, and another 6 to build it up to what you see now." Eleanor was moved by his determination. "That's remarkable, Adam, truly." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what needed doing, like you coming all this way on your own." "Takes courage. Or desperation," Eleanor said with a wry smile. "Sometimes they're the same thing," Adam replied thoughtfully. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 3 riders approaching from the east. Adam raised his hand in greeting as they drew closer. "My crew," he explained to Eleanor. "Samuel Drake's the older one, fought alongside me at Antietam. The younger 2 are the Wilkins brothers, Tom and John, good workers if a bit rough around the edges." The men dismounted, eyeing Eleanor with undisguised curiosity as Adam made the introductions. Samuel Drake was a weathered man in his mid-40s with a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a war wound, Eleanor guessed. The Wilkins brothers were in their early 20s, dark-haired and freckled with identical mischievous grins. "Madam," Samuel said, touching his hat respectfully. "Heard Mr. Holcomb was expecting company. Didn't know it was such fine company, though." "Miss Preston is from Boston," Adam explained. "She'll be staying for a month while we determine if we suit for marriage." Eleanor appreciated Adam's straightforward approach, no hiding the arrangement or pretending it was something it wasn't. "Boston." Tom Wilkins whistled low. "That's a far piece to travel, madam." "Indeed it is," Eleanor agreed, "but worth every mile to see this beautiful country." "Wait till winter," John Wilkins quipped. "Not so pretty when the nor'easters blow through." "I'm familiar with harsh winters, Mr. Wilkins," Eleanor replied with a smile. "Boston has its share of snowstorms." Samuel gave her an appraising look. "Reckon you might do all right here after all, Miss Preston. Boss needs someone with spine." Adam cleared his throat. "All right, enough socializing. Samuel, I need you and the boys to ride the north fence line today. Those Williams cattle keep finding their way through somehow." As the men prepared to leave, Eleanor noticed Samuel giving Adam a subtle nod of approval. The small gesture warmed her. It seemed Adam's most trusted friend thought she might be suitable after all. The rest of the day passed in a blur of new experiences. Eleanor helped Adam repair a chicken coop, learned the names of all the horses, and spent an hour in the garden, happily getting dirt under her fingernails as she pulled weeds and inspected the growing vegetables. By late afternoon, she had rolled up her sleeves, tied an apron over her dress, and was kneading bread dough in the kitchen when Adam came in from checking on a pregnant mare. He stopped in the doorway, a strange expression crossing his face as he watched her work. "What is it?" Eleanor asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Have I flour on my nose?" "No," Adam said softly. It's been a long time since this house felt like a home." The simple statement touched Eleanor deeply. She smiled, continuing to knead the dough. "Every home needs bread baking in the oven. My mother always said you could tell a happy household by the smell of yeast rising." Adam removed his hat and hung it on a peg by the door. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Eleanor agreed, a pang of old grief touching her heart. "She died when I was 16. My father never quite recovered from losing her. I'm sorry, Adam said, and she could tell he meant it. My own parents passed when I was young, raised by my uncle until I was old enough to make my own way. This exchange of personal histories felt significant, somehow another layer of their relationship forming, another bridge between them. Will your men be joining us for supper? Eleanor asked, changing the subject to lighter matters. Adam shook his head. They keep to the bunkhouse most nights. Samuel can manage a decent stew when he puts his mind to it. Perhaps tomorrow I'll send something over, Eleanor suggested, as a proper introduction. Adam smiled. They'd appreciate that, though I warn you, once they taste your cooking, we'll never be rid of them at mealtimes. Eleanor laughed, enjoying the easy banter between them. I'll risk it. As dusk fell, they again sat on the porch after supper, watching the spectacular sunset. This time, Adam had brought out a bottle of elderberry wine for special occasions, he explained. And is this a special occasion? Eleanor asked, accepting the small glass he offered. I'd say so, Adam replied, his eyes meeting hers in the golden light. It's not every day a man gets to share his home with a woman who can bake bread that makes angels jealous. Eleanor felt a blush warm her cheeks. You're too kind. Not kind. Honest. Adam sipped his wine. My father used to say you can tell a person's character by how they approach work that isn't being watched or praised. You've thrown yourself into ranch life without complaint, though it must be very different from what you're used to. I find I'm enjoying it, Eleanor admitted. There's something satisfying about physical work, seeing immediate results from your efforts. Teaching is rewarding, but in a different way. The results take years to show themselves. Adam nodded thoughtfully. I can see why you were a good teacher. You have patience and a keen eye. Had, Eleanor corrected gently. That life is behind me now. Perhaps not entirely, Adam suggested. Chico's growing. The school's always looking for teachers with proper training. Eleanor looked at him in surprise. You wouldn't mind if I continued teaching? Mind? Adam looked genuinely puzzled. Why would I mind? Seems a waste of talent otherwise. Besides, a ranch wife's work ebbs and flows with the seasons. Might be good to have something else to occupy your time in winter. His casual acceptance of her professional identity, something her father had barely tolerated, and most men would have outright rejected, moved Eleanor deeply. You continue to surprise me, Adam Holcomb, he smiled, raising his glass slightly. As do you, Eleanor Preston. They sipped their wine in comfortable silence as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Buck lay at their feet, occasionally sighing contentedly. The peaceful moment was broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Adam set his glass down, instantly alert, not expecting anyone this late. He stood, moving to the edge of the porch as a rider came into view, a man on a lathered horse, riding hard. That's Ben Turner from town, Adam said, his voice tense. He stepped down from the porch to meet the rider. Ben, what brings you out so late? The man reined in his horse, breathing nearly as hard as his mount. Fire at the Williams place, Adam. Lightning strike hit their barn. Sheriffs gathering men to help fight it before it spreads to the house or the range. Adam nodded grimly. I'll saddle up. Eleanor, go, she said immediately, understanding the gravity of the situation. I'll be fine here. Adam looked torn for a moment, clearly reluctant to leave her alone on her second night at the ranch. A fire won't wait, Adam, Eleanor said firmly. Your neighbors need you. He nodded, his expression grateful. I'll send Samuel to check on you if I can. Buck will stay, he'll let you know if anyone approaches. He turned to the dog. Stay, Buck. Guard. The dog immediately sat at attention, his playful demeanor replaced by watchful vigilance. Adam hesitated, then quickly strode to Eleanor and took her hand. Bar the door after I leave. I'll knock 3 times when I return so you'll know it's me." The concern in his eyes touched her. "I'll be perfectly fine. Please be careful." Adam squeezed her hand once, then released it and hurried to the barn. Within minutes, he had saddled his horse and was galloping away, following Ben Turner toward the distant glow on the horizon that Eleanor now noticed for the first time. True to her word, Eleanor barred the door after Adam left. Buck followed her inside, positioning himself near the entrance as if understanding his responsibility. The house suddenly seemed very large and empty without Adam's presence. To keep her mind occupied, Eleanor busied herself with household tasks, cleaning the supper dishes, setting the bread dough to rise overnight, and sweeping the wooden floors. But as the hours passed and midnight approached with no word from Adam, anxiety began to gnaw at her. Ranch fires were notoriously dangerous. She had read enough to know that. They could spread rapidly across dry pastureland, consuming everything in their path. Men had died fighting such blazes, trapped by sudden shifts in the wind or overcome by smoke. Eleanor tried to push such thoughts from her mind. She stoked the fire in the stove to make fresh coffee, thinking Adam would appreciate it when he returned. If he returned, no, she would not allow herself to think that way. Adam was experienced and capable. He knew this land and its dangers. Just past midnight, Buck suddenly lifted his head, ears perked forward. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Eleanor froze, listening intently. The sound of approaching horses reached her ears more than one by the cadence of the hoofbeats. Buck moved to the door, his posture alert but not aggressive. 3 firm knocks sounded on the wooden panels. "Eleanor, it's Adam." Relief flooded through her as she quickly unbarred the door. Adam stood on the porch, his face and clothes smudged with soot, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Behind him, Samuel Drake and the Wilkins brothers sat on their horses, looking equally tired and dirty. "You're safe," Eleanor breathed, stepping back to let Adam enter. "Fires contained," he reported, removing his hat. "Lost the Williams barn and some pasture, but saved the house and livestock." He glanced toward the kitchen. "Is that coffee I smell?" Eleanor nodded. "I thought you might need it. There's plenty for everyone." Adam turned to his men. "You heard the lady. Come get some coffee before you head to your bunks." The men didn't need to be told twice. They dismounted wearily and filed into the house, murmuring thanks to Eleanor as she poured steaming cups of coffee for each of them. "You're an angel, Miss Preston," Tom Wilkins declared after his first sip. "Boss is a lucky man." "If I'm lucky, it's because I have good men working for me," Adam replied, but his eyes were on Eleanor, warm with appreciation. After the men had finished their coffee and departed for the bunkhouse, Adam sank into a chair at the kitchen table, the adrenaline of the night's events clearly wearing off. "You should get some rest," Eleanor said softly, setting a plate of bread and cheese before him. "You must be exhausted." "Need to wash this soot off first," Adam said, looking down at his filthy clothes. "Don't want to track it through the house." Eleanor nodded. "I'll heat some water." While Adam ate, Eleanor filled a large basin with water from the pump and set it on the stove to warm. She found a clean towel and soap, placing them beside the basin. "Thank you," Adam said when she told him the water was ready. "I'm sorry about tonight, not exactly how I planned your second evening here." Eleanor smiled gently. "Life doesn't always follow our plans, does it? Go wash up." "I'll wait to make sure you don't need anything else." Adam hesitated, then nodded. "Won't be long." While he washed in the privacy of his room, Eleanor tidied the kitchen and banked the fire for the night. When Adam emerged, his face and hands were clean, his hair damp and curling slightly at the ends. He had changed into a clean shirt and trousers, though he still moved with the stiffness of someone who had pushed their body to its limits. Better, Eleanor asked. Much, Adam confirmed. He looked at her thoughtfully. Most women would be upset by being left alone their second night in a strange place. Eleanor considered this. Perhaps, but I'm not most women, Adam, and this doesn't feel as strange as it should. She paused, then added, besides, you were helping neighbors in need. That speaks to your character. Adam's expression softened. As your response speaks to yours. He stepped closer, close enough that Eleanor could smell the soap on his skin and see the fatigue in his eyes. Eleanor. Her heart quickened at the way he said her name soft, almost reverently. Yes. She whispered. For a moment she thought he might reach for her, might close the distance between them. Instead, he took a deep breath and stepped back slightly. Thank you for understanding tonight, and for the coffee. It meant a lot to the men. He cleared his throat. We should both get some rest. Morning comes early on a ranch. Eleanor nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Of course. Good night, Adam. Good night, Eleanor. In her room, Eleanor changed into her nightgown and brushed her hair, reflecting on the day's events. In just 2 days, she had begun to feel more at home on this California ranch than she had in years in Boston. Adam Holcomb was proving to be everything his letters had suggested and more kind, thoughtful, hardworking, and surprisingly progressive in his thinking. And there was something else, a connection forming between them that went beyond practical considerations or the arrangement they had agreed upon. She had seen it in his eyes tonight, felt it in the tension of that moment in the kitchen. Adam was attracted to her, despite the difference between the photograph she had sent and the reality of her appearance. As Eleanor slipped beneath the covers, she allowed herself to imagine, just for a moment, a future here as Adam's wife, as the mistress of this ranch, perhaps even as the mother of his children. The thought no longer frightened her as it once had. Instead, it filled her with a warm hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. The next several days fell into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Eleanor rose early each morning, preparing breakfast for Adam before he headed out to work with his men. During the days, she tackled the household tasks that had clearly been neglected in the absence of a woman's touch: washing windows, airing bedding, organizing the pantry, and giving the entire house a thorough cleaning. Adam came home for the midday meal whenever he could, and they would share simple but hearty food and conversation about their respective mornings. Eleanor found herself looking forward to these brief meetings, to the way Adam's face would light up when he entered the house and found her there. In the afternoons, Eleanor often joined Adam for part of his work, learning to gather eggs from the sometimes temperamental hens, helping to weed and tend the vegetable garden, even learning to milk the 2 dairy cows that provided the ranch with fresh milk and butter. Her city-bred hands grew calloused, and her fair skin tanned in the California sun. Her dresses, once crisp and proper, now often bore the marks of her labor: a grass stain here, a splash of mud there. But Eleanor found she didn't mind. There was an honesty to this work, a directness that satisfied something deep within her. On the 5th day of her stay, Adam announced at breakfast that he needed to ride into Chico for supplies and to check mail at the post office. Would you like to come along? He asked, watching her reaction carefully. Might be nice for you to see the town properly now that you're settling in. Eleanor smiled, pleased by the invitation. I would love to. Should I wear my best dress? Adam's eyes crinkled at the corners. No need for that. Town folks are practical sorts, though. He hesitated. You might want to wear your bonnet. Sun's mighty strong today. Eleanor understood his unspoken concern. He was worried about her complexion, which was already showing the effects of daily outdoor work. The consideration touched her. I'll be sure to wear it, she assured him. They set out after breakfast, riding in Adam's wagon with Buck trotting alongside. The journey to town took about an hour, during which Eleanor marveled at the landscape rolling hills giving way to more settled farmland as they approached Chico. The town itself was larger than Eleanor had initially realized during her arrival by stagecoach. Several streets lined with wooden buildings stretched out from a central square. A proper church stood at one end, a schoolhouse at the other, with businesses of all sorts in between. "Chico's growing fast," Adam explained as they drove down the main street. "When I first came here 8 years ago, it was half this size." "It's charming," Eleanor said, taking in the bustling activity around them. People nodded greetings to Adam as they passed, eyeing Eleanor with undisguised curiosity. They stopped first at the general store, where Adam needed to order fence posts and other supplies. The proprietor, Mr. Jenkins, greeted Adam warmly before turning his attention to Eleanor. "And who might this lovely lady be?" he asked, his bushy eyebrows raised in interest. "Miss Eleanor Preston," Adam replied, a note of pride in his voice. "From Boston. She's considering becoming Mrs. Holcomb." Eleanor felt a flush of pleasure at the way Adam introduced her, not as a mail-order bride or in any way that might diminish her dignity, but simply as a woman who might choose to become his wife. Mr. Jenkins beamed. "Well now, that's the best news I've heard all month. Adam here's one of our most respected ranchers, Miss Preston. You couldn't find a finer man." "I'm beginning to realize that," Eleanor replied with a smile, glancing at Adam, who looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. As Adam discussed his order with Mr. Jenkins, Eleanor browsed the store, admiring the fabrics and household goods on display. She was examining a set of blue and white dishes when a voice spoke behind her. Those would look lovely in Adam's house. Eleanor turned to find a plump, gray-haired woman watching her with kind eyes. "I'm Martha Williams," the woman continued. "My husband and I own the ranch that had the fire the other night. I wanted to thank you for sending Adam to help. Without him organizing the men, we might have lost everything." "It was Adam's decision," Eleanor replied. "I merely encouraged him to go." Martha smiled knowingly. A good woman's encouragement can make all the difference in a man's actions. She lowered her voice slightly. "The whole town's talking about Adam Holcomb finally finding himself a wife. We've been trying to match him up with local girls for years, but he never showed interest. Must have been waiting for someone special." Before Eleanor could respond to this revelation, Adam approached, having finished his business with Mr. Jenkins. "Mrs. Williams," he greeted the older woman. "How's John? Burns healing all right?" "Much better, thanks to your quick thinking with that wet blanket," Martha replied. "I was just getting acquainted with Miss Preston. You've kept her quite a secret, Adam." Adam's ears reddened slightly. "Not a secret, just private," Martha laughed. "Well, you won't be able to keep her private for long. Word travels fast in a small town." She patted Eleanor's arm. "You must join us for Sunday dinner soon. I want to hear all about Boston." After Martha departed, Adam gave Eleanor an apologetic look. "Sorry about that. Town folks can be a bit nosy." "She was very kind," Eleanor assured him. "And I would like to meet more of your neighbors properly, not just during emergencies." Adam nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "There's a social at the church this Saturday, dancing and such. We could go if you'd like. Might be a good way to meet everyone at once." The invitation surprised and delighted Eleanor. "I would enjoy that very much." Their next stop was the post office, where the postmaster handed Adam several letters and a small package. "Most are business," Adam explained as they walked back to the wagon. "But this," he held up the package, "is something I ordered for the ranch a while back. Special seeds from back east. Thought we might try growing some flowers as well as vegetables." The consideration behind the gesture touched Eleanor deeply. Adam had ordered flower seeds before he even knew if she would stay, wanting to make the ranch more welcoming just in case she did. Their final stop was the millinery shop, where Adam insisted on buying Eleanor a new bonnet, one better suited to California sun than Boston fashion, as he put it. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Peterson, fussed over Eleanor, delighted to have a new customer with Eastern sophistication to dress. "You have such lovely features," Mrs. Peterson declared as she fitted a wide-brimmed straw hat trimmed with simple blue ribbon on Eleanor's head. "This shade complements your coloring perfectly." Eleanor caught Adam watching her in the mirror, a soft expression in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. When their gazes met in the reflection, he didn't look away, but offered a small, private smile that felt more intimate than any words could have been. By the time they finished their errands and stopped for lunch at the small hotel restaurant, Eleanor had met what felt like half the town. Everyone seemed genuinely pleased to make her acquaintance, and more than one person made comments suggesting they assumed she and Adam were already engaged. "I hope the attention wasn't overwhelming," Adam said as they began the journey back to the ranch, the wagon loaded with their purchases. "Not at all," Eleanor assured him. "Everyone was very welcoming." Adam nodded, looking relieved. "Chico's a good community. People look out for each other here." "I noticed," Eleanor said. "It reminds me of the neighborhood where I grew up in Boston, before we moved to the city center after my mother died. Everyone knew everyone else's business, but they also brought soup when you were ill and celebrated your successes as if they were their own." "That's it exactly," Adam agreed, clearly pleased that she understood. After a moment of comfortable silence, he added, "I've been meaning to ask, would you like to learn to ride? Properly, I mean, not just in the wagon. A ranch wife needs to be comfortable on horseback." The casual reference to her as a ranch wife, not a potential wife, but simply as if it were already decided, sent a warm flutter through Eleanor's chest. "I would love to learn, though I should warn you, my experience with horses is limited to very sedate carriage rides in the Boston Common." Adam chuckled. "We'll start slow. I've got a mare named Daisy who's gentle as a lamb, perfect for beginners." "Then I look forward to meeting Daisy," Eleanor replied, enjoying the way Adam's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The next morning after breakfast, Adam took Eleanor to the corral where a dappled gray mare watched them with intelligent eyes. "This is Daisy," Adam said, offering an apple to the horse, who took it delicately from his palm. "She's been with me for 5 years now. Solid, dependable, not easily spooked." Eleanor approached cautiously, extending her hand as Adam had shown her. Daisy sniffed her fingers, then bumped her palm gently with her velvety nose. "She likes you," Adam observed. "Important for horse and rider to trust each other." He spent the next hour teaching Eleanor the basics: how to approach a horse, how to saddle and bridle properly, how to mount and hold the reins. His instructions were clear and patient, his hands occasionally guiding hers to show the correct technique. Each touch sent a small thrill through Eleanor, though she tried not to show it. There was something undeniably attractive about Adam in his element, confident, knowledgeable, and still gentle in his teaching. When it came time to actually mount, Adam stood close, his hands at her waist to help boost her into the saddle. For a moment after she was seated, his hands lingered, his eyes meeting hers in a gaze that held more than just concern for her safety. "You're a natural," he said softly, his voice slightly rougher than before. Eleanor smiled down at him, suddenly very aware of the height difference created by the horse. "I have a good teacher." The lesson continued with Adam leading Daisy around the corral on a long rein, letting Eleanor get accustomed to the rhythm of the horse's movement. By the end of the hour, she was guiding Daisy herself in slow circles, her confidence growing with each round. "Enough for today," Adam finally said. "Don't want you getting saddle sore your first time out." As he helped her dismount, his hands strong and sure at her waist, Eleanor found herself face to face with him, closer than they had ever been. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. His eyes certainly suggested he wanted to, but instead he stepped back respectfully. "You did well today," he said, his voice warm with approval. "We'll practice again tomorrow if you'd like." "I would like that very much," Eleanor replied, trying to hide her disappointment at the moment that hadn't come to pass. The days leading up to the church social were filled with work and small discoveries. Eleanor learned to make soap, using fat rendered from the last pig butchering, and lye from wood ashes, a messy process that left her with a new appreciation for the ready-made soaps she had taken for granted in Boston. She discovered a patch of wild berries growing near the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property, and spent a happy afternoon picking them to make jam. Adam, for his part, seemed to find reasons to be around the house more often than his ranch work strictly required. He fixed the loose step on the back porch, repaired a leak in the roof that had been bothering him for months, and even spent an evening crafting a proper clothesline for Eleanor after noticing her struggling with the makeshift one. Each small gesture, each consideration, drew them closer together. Their conversations over meals and during evening porch sits grew deeper, more personal. Eleanor told Adam about her dreams of running her own school someday, and he shared his hopes of expanding the ranch to include more land to the north, where the grazing was particularly good. "You speak as if you'll still be teaching after we marry," Adam observed one evening as they sat watching the sunset. Eleanor tensed slightly, worried she had presumed too much. "I don't mean to assume, no," Adam interrupted gently. "I meant it as a good thing. I've been thinking about what you said about the school in town. Chico's growing fast, they'll need good teachers. If that's what would make you happy, I'd support it." Relief and gratitude washed over Eleanor. "You truly wouldn't mind a wife who works outside the home?" Adam considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Out here, everyone works. Ranch wives don't just keep house, they help with calving, manage gardens that feed the family through winter, sometimes even drive cattle. The idea that a woman's work should be confined to the house is a city notion." He smiled slightly. "Besides, I've seen how quickly you finish household tasks when you set your mind to it. You'd be bored within a month if that was all you did." Eleanor laughed, surprised by how well he had come to understand her in such a short time. "You may be right about that." Saturday arrived, warm and clear, perfect weather for the church social. Eleanor spent extra time preparing for the event, washing her hair and pinning it in a more elaborate style than she had bothered with since arriving at the ranch. She chose her best dress, a deep blue muslin with white trim that complemented her new bonnet. When she emerged from her room, Adam was waiting in the main room, dressed in clean trousers and a white shirt, his usually unruly hair slicked down with water. He had clearly made an effort with his appearance, and the sight of him handsome and somewhat nervous made Eleanor's heart flutter. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his eyes warm with admiration. "Thank you," Eleanor replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "You look very handsome yourself." The drive to town was filled with a pleasant anticipation. Eleanor found herself looking forward to the social as more than just an opportunity to meet Adam's neighbors. It felt like a chance to be seen publicly as a couple, to test how they fit together in the community. The churchyard was already filled with people when they arrived, families with children, young couples, elderly folks seated in chairs beneath shady trees. Tables had been set up with food and drink, and a small group of musicians was tuning instruments on a wooden platform. "Quite a turnout," Eleanor observed as Adam helped her down from the wagon. "Best attendance is always when there's dancing," Adam replied with a smile. He offered his arm. "Shall we?" As they moved through the crowd, Eleanor was introduced to dozens of people: the blacksmith and his wife, the banker, the schoolteacher, a harried-looking young man named Mr. Peterson, who immediately brightened when Adam mentioned Eleanor's teaching experience, and countless farmers and ranchers from the surrounding area. What struck Eleanor most was how easily Adam included her in conversations, how naturally he referred to our ranch and our plans, as if they had already decided on a shared future. Even more surprising was how right it felt to be described that way, as half of a partnership, rather than just a mail-order bride on approval. After the initial round of socializing, the dancing began. Adam turned to Eleanor with a slightly self-conscious expression. "I should warn you, I'm not much of a dancer. Ranch work doesn't leave much time for practicing." "I'm sure you'll do just fine," Eleanor assured him. "Besides, I haven't danced in years myself. We can be awkward together." Adam laughed, the tension leaving his shoulders. "That's a bargain I can accept." As it turned out, Adam was being modest about his dancing abilities. He moved with the same natural grace he showed on horseback, guiding Eleanor through the lively reels and country dances with a sure hand. Their bodies found a rhythm together that seemed to extend beyond the dance floor, a harmony that felt significant in ways Eleanor wasn't quite ready to name. During a break in the dancing, while Adam fetched them glasses of lemonade, Eleanor found herself approached by a group of women around her own age. "Miss Preston," one of them greeted her warmly. "I'm Rebecca Johnson, the doctor's wife. We're so pleased Adam has finally found someone." "Has he been looking long?" Eleanor asked, curious about Adam's past. The women exchanged glances. "Not actively," another woman, introduced as Sarah Miller, replied. "But it's been clear for years that he's been ready to settle down. Just never seemed to find the right match locally." "My Thomas says Adam's been building that ranch with a family in mind from the start," Rebecca added. "The way he designed the house with room to expand, the extra pasture land he bought last year." "He's a planner, that one," Sarah agreed. "Doesn't do anything without thinking 10 steps ahead." This insight into Adam's character fascinated Eleanor. Had he truly been preparing for a family all these years? The thought was both touching and slightly intimidating, the weight of his long-held dreams now potentially resting on her decision. "He's a good man," Rebecca said, her voice softer. "One of the best in the county. Never turns away a neighbor in need, fair in his business dealings, respectful to everyone regardless of their station." She gave Eleanor a meaningful look. "Those qualities are rare, Miss Preston, especially in a man as handsome as Adam Holcomb." Before Eleanor could respond, Adam returned with the lemonade, nodding politely to the group of women. "Ladies, I hope you're not filling Miss Preston's ears with tall tales about me." "Only the most flattering ones," Rebecca assured him with a smile. She turned to Eleanor. "We'll let you enjoy your lemonade, but do join us for the quilting circle on Thursday if you're still in town. We meet at the church at 10. As the women moved away, Adam handed Eleanor her lemonade. "They mean well," he said with a slightly embarrassed smile, "but they do love to meddle." "They seem to think very highly of you," Eleanor observed, sipping her drink. "Been here long enough for folks to get the measure of me, I suppose." Adam's eyes met hers over his glass. "What about you? Have you got my measure yet, Eleanor?" The question held more weight than his light tone suggested. Eleanor considered her answer carefully. "I believe I'm beginning to," she replied honestly. "And what I've seen so far I admire greatly. A warmth spread across Adam's features that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. That's good to hear. The moment was interrupted by the musicians striking up another tune, a slower waltz this time. Adam set down his empty glass and offered his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Preston?" Eleanor placed her hand in his, feeling the calluses earned through years of hard work. "You may, Mr. Holcomb." This dance was different from the earlier ones, closer, more intimate. Adam's hand rested lightly at her waist, hers on his shoulder, their other hands clasped together. As they moved in slow circles around the dance floor, Eleanor was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, of the clean scent of soap and sunshine that clung to Adam's clothes, of the way his eyes never left her face. "You're a better dancer than you claimed," she murmured as he guided her through a perfect turn. "Good partner," he replied simply, his voice deeper than usual. "Makes all the difference." Something in his tone suggested he wasn't just talking about dancing. Eleanor felt her pulse quicken, and for a moment, the crowded churchyard seemed to fade away until there was only Adam, his blue eyes reflecting the afternoon sunlight, his hand warm and steady at her waist. The music ended too soon, bringing Eleanor back to awareness of their surroundings. Adam released her reluctantly, his fingers lingering against hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for the dance," she said softly. "My pleasure," he replied, and the sincerity in his voice sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. The rest of the social passed in a happy blur of more dancing, conversation with new acquaintances, and sharing the excellent food that seemed to be a point of pride among the community's women. Eleanor found herself enjoying the simple pleasures of the gathering, the honest laughter, the lack of pretension so different from Boston's social events, the genuine welcome extended to her as Adam's potential bride. By the time they began the journey home, the sun was setting, painting the hills in gold and crimson. Eleanor felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. The day had confirmed something she had been suspecting for the past week. She belonged here with Adam in this community. "You're quiet," Adam observed as they drove through the twilight. "Tired from all the dancing, a bit," Eleanor admitted. "But mostly just thinking. Good thoughts, I hope." She turned to look at him, his profile outlined against the sunset. "Very good thoughts." Adam glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "Care to share them?" Eleanor hesitated. They still had 2 weeks left of their agreed-upon month of consideration. Was it too soon to admit she had already made her decision? Would it seem too eager, too desperate? "I was thinking how natural it felt today," she said carefully. "Being with you, meeting your community. It didn't feel like I was a stranger or a mail-order bride on approval. It felt like you belonged." Adam finished for her when she trailed off. "Yes," she said softly. "Exactly that." Adam was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road ahead. Then, with deliberate care, he reached across the space between them and took her hand in his. "You do belong, Eleanor," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "If you want to." The simple statement, laden with unspoken meaning, brought tears to Eleanor's eyes. She curled her fingers around his, squeezing gently. "I'm beginning to think I do want to." They drove the rest of the way home hand in hand, the connection between them speaking more eloquently than words could have. When they reached the ranch, Adam helped Eleanor down from the wagon, but instead of releasing her immediately, he kept hold of her hand. "Eleanor," he began, then seemed to struggle for words. "I know we agreed on a month, and I'll honor that if you need the full time, but I want you to know that, for me, the decision is already made." His eyes held her steadily in the gathering dusk. "I want you to stay. Not just as my wife on paper or my partner in running the ranch, but because these past days have been the happiest I can remember." Eleanor's heart swelled at his honesty. "Oh, Adam." Before she could continue, he raised a hand to gently cup her cheek. "You don't have to answer now, just think about it, please." Eleanor leaned slightly into his touch, savoring the warmth of his palm against her skin. "I will." For a moment they stood like that, suspended in the twilight between friendship and something deeper. Then, with exquisite slowness, Adam lowered his head until his lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it felt like a question. Eleanor answered by rising on her toes to press more firmly against his mouth, her free hand coming to rest on his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened, Adam's arm encircling her waist to draw her closer, their joined hands still clasped between them. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you stepped off that stagecoach," he admitted with a soft laugh. "Even though I wasn't the young woman in the photograph." Eleanor couldn't help asking. Adam pulled back slightly to look into her eyes, his expression serious. "Eleanor, you're more beautiful to me now after seeing your courage and kindness and strength than any photograph could ever capture." The sincerity in his voice brought fresh tears to her eyes. "Adam Holcomb, you are a remarkable man." He smiled, gently wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Just a man who knows a good thing when he sees it." He pressed another soft kiss to her lips, then reluctantly released her. "We should go inside before I forget I'm supposed to be a gentleman." That night, in her small room, Eleanor lay awake for hours, her fingers touching her lips where she could still feel Adam's kiss. The decision that had seemed so monumental just a week ago now felt inevitable, right in a way she couldn't explain but deeply felt. She would stay. She would become Adam Holcomb's wife. Not because she had no other options or because she was desperate, but because she had found something precious and unexpected, a man who saw her as she truly was and valued her for it, a community where she could belong, and a life that offered purpose and joy in equal measure. The next morning, Eleanor rose early, determined to speak with Adam before he left for his day's work. She found him in the kitchen, stoking the fire in the cook stove, his back to her as she entered. "Adam," she said softly. He turned quickly, surprise and pleasure lighting his features when he saw her. "You're up early." Eleanor moved closer, suddenly nervous despite her resolve. "I wanted to talk to you before you left for the day." Understanding dawned in Adam's eyes. He straightened, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening." "I don't need the full month," Eleanor said simply. "I know my mind and my heart, Adam. I want to stay. I want to be your wife." The joy that spread across Adam's face was like sunrise breaking over the hills, gradual at first, then brilliantly complete. He closed the distance between them in 2 long strides and gathered her into his arms, lifting her feet clear off the floor in his enthusiasm. "You've made me the happiest man in California, Eleanor Preston," he declared, setting her down but keeping his arms around her. Eleanor laughed, her hands resting on his broad shoulders. "And you've given me a second chance at happiness I never expected to find." Adam kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and joy and certainty. When they parted, he kept her close, his expression turning more serious. "We'll need to make arrangements. The preacher comes through Chico once a month. He'll be here next Sunday. If that's not too soon." "Not too soon at all," Eleanor assured him, touched by his eagerness. "Though I should warn you, I don't have a proper wedding dress." "We could ride into town today, see what Mrs. Peterson has in her shop," Adam suggested. "Or if you prefer something from back east, we could wait longer." Eleanor shook her head. "I don't need anything elaborate. Something simple from Mrs. Peterson's shop will be perfect." She smiled up at him. "I'm more concerned with the marriage than the wedding." Adam's eyes softened with emotion. "That's just one of the many reasons I love you, Eleanor Preston." The words, spoken so naturally, as if he had been saying them for years rather than for the first time, filled Eleanor with warmth. "And I love you, Adam Holcomb, more than I thought possible after knowing someone for such a short time." He kissed her again, then reluctantly released her. "If we're to ride into town today, I should tell Samuel he's in charge of the men, and there's the matter of your room." He trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. "My room," Eleanor prompted. "Well, once we're married, I assumed. That is, if you'd prefer." Adam ran a hand through his hair, uncharacteristically flustered. "The master bedroom is larger, of course, but if you'd rather keep separate rooms at first, until you're more comfortable." Eleanor felt a rush of affection for this strong, capable man who was now stumbling over his words out of consideration for her feelings. "Adam," she said gently, "when I agree to be your wife, I mean it in every sense. I would be honored to share your room, your bed, and your life." Relief and something deeper, more primal, flashed in Adam's eyes. "Thank you," he said simply, "for your honesty and for saying yes." The news of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch and into town. Samuel and the Wilkins brothers offered hearty congratulations, the older man going so far as to say he'd never seen the boss this happy, not even when that prize bull won at the county fair. Mrs. Peterson was delighted to help with a wedding dress, showing Eleanor several ready-made white dresses that could be quickly altered to fit. Eleanor chose a simple but elegant gown of ivory muslin with lace trim at the collar and cuffs modest but undeniably bridal. "You'll make a beautiful bride," Mrs. Peterson declared as she pinned the alterations. "And about time, too. Adam Holcomb has been the most eligible bachelor in the county for years. Broke plenty of local hearts when he sent for a bride from back east instead of choosing one of our girls." "I can hardly believe he couldn't find someone suitable here," Eleanor said, genuinely puzzled. Adam was handsome, successful, kind. What woman wouldn't want him? Mrs. Peterson smiled knowingly as she worked. "Oh, it wasn't for lack of willing candidates. But Adam's different from most men around here. Reads books, has ideas about the world, needs a woman who can match him in that department." She glanced up at Eleanor. "From what I hear, he found just that in you." The week leading up to the wedding passed in a flurry of activity. Word spread through the community, and soon offers of help poured in. Martha Williams would bake the wedding cake. The Johnson family would provide flowers from their garden. Mr. Jenkins offered to close the general store early so everyone could attend. Eleanor was touched by the community's generosity. "They hardly know me," she marveled to Adam one evening as they sat on the porch after supper. "They know you're important to me," Adam replied, taking her hand. "That's enough for them." He hesitated, then added, "I wish your father could be here. Or someone from your family." Eleanor felt a pang of old grief, but it was softer now, cushioned by her new happiness. "So do I, but he would have liked you, Adam. He always valued honesty and hard work above all else." "What about friends from Boston? Is there anyone you'd want to invite?" "We could delay the wedding, send telegrams." The offer touched Eleanor deeply. "That's very thoughtful, but no. My closest friend, Charlotte, moved to Philadelphia last year with her husband. The others, well, we weren't as close as I once thought. When my circumstances changed after Father's death, many of them suddenly became too busy to call." She squeezed Adam's hand. "My future is here now with you. That's what matters to me." Adam raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I'll spend my life making sure you never regret that decision." Sunday morning dawned clear and bright, a perfect day for a wedding. Eleanor dressed carefully in her new gown, arranging her hair in a simple but elegant style, adorned with white flowers that Martha Williams had brought from her garden. As she looked at herself in the small mirror, Eleanor barely recognized the woman who stared back at her. Gone was the tired, worried schoolteacher who had boarded a train in Boston just 2 weeks ago. In her place stood a bride still 30 years old, still with silver threads in her auburn hair, still with fine lines around her eyes but radiantly happy, her face glowing with a confidence and peace that no youthful beauty could match. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Eleanor." It was Samuel's voice. "Wagon's ready whenever you are. Adam's already gone ahead to the church with the boys." Following tradition, Adam had spent the night at the bunkhouse with his ranch hands, leaving Eleanor alone in the house for her last night as a single woman. The separation had felt strange after 2 weeks of growing so accustomed to his presence. "Thank you, Samuel," she called. "I'll be right out." Taking one last look in the mirror, Eleanor picked up the small bouquet of wildflowers she had gathered that morning and stepped out into her future. The church was filled to capacity when Eleanor arrived. It seemed the entire community had turned out for the wedding. Samuel escorted her from the wagon to the church door with a gravity that suggested he took this responsibility very seriously. "Adam's a brother to me," he said quietly as they paused at the entrance. "Never seen him as happy as he's been since you arrived. Thank you for that." Touched by his words, Eleanor squeezed his arm. "The happiness goes both ways, Samuel." At the doorway, the small group of musicians began playing, signaling her entrance. The congregation rose and turned to watch as Samuel led Eleanor down the aisle toward Adam, who stood waiting at the altar. The moment Eleanor saw him tall and handsome in his best suit, his eyes fixed on her with such love and wonder, every doubt, every fear she had ever harbored about this journey vanished like morning mist in the sunshine. This was right. This was where she belonged. When she reached Adam's side and Samuel placed her hand in his, Eleanor felt as if her heart might burst from happiness. The preacher began the ceremony, but Eleanor barely heard the familiar words. All she could focus on was Adam's face, his hand warm around hers, the future spreading before them as vast and promising as the California hills. "I, Adam James Holcomb, take thee, Eleanor Margaret Preston, to be my lawfully wedded wife." Adam's voice was clear and strong, his eyes never leaving hers as he spoke his vows. When her turn came, Eleanor's voice wavered only slightly with emotion. "I, Eleanor Margaret Preston, take thee, Adam James Holcomb, to be my lawfully wedded husband." The exchange of rings, a simple gold band for Eleanor that Adam had purchased in Chico, and his father's ring for him that he had kept in a small wooden box all these years, sealed their promises to one another. "By the power vested in me," the preacher concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Adam's kiss was tender but held a promise of passion to come, when they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Holcomb for the first time. The cheers and applause that greeted them felt like a blessing from the community that would now be Eleanor's home. The celebration that followed on the church grounds was joyous, and informal tables laden with food contributed by neighbors, music for dancing, children playing games in the shade of the oak trees. Eleanor found herself surrounded by well-wishers, each offering congratulations and advice and welcomes to the community. "You look beautiful," Martha Williams told her, patting her hand, "and happier than any young bride I've seen." "I am happy," Eleanor confirmed. "Happier than I ever expected to be." "That's because you found the right man at the right time," Martha said wisely. "Age doesn't matter nearly as much as that." As the afternoon wore on, Eleanor found moments to observe Adam among his friends and neighbors, accepting congratulations with humble thanks, laughing at the good-natured teasing about finally being caught. playing briefly with the Johnson children who seemed to adore him. Every glimpse confirmed what she already knew: she had married a good man, respected and loved by his community. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Adam found her among a group of women and offered his hand. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Holcomb?" The new name sent a thrill through Eleanor. "Yes, I believe I am, Mr. Holcomb." Amid cheers and flying rice, they climbed into the wagon that had been decorated with ribbons and flowers by the Wilkins brothers. Buck trotted alongside as Adam guided the horses out of town and toward the ranch, their ranch now, truly Eleanor's home. "Happy?" Adam asked as the sounds of the celebration faded behind them. Eleanor leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. "Completely. And you?" "More than I have words to express." He glanced down at her, his eyes filled with emotion. "I sent for a bride hoping for a partner, Eleanor. Instead, I found the other half of my heart." "As did I," Eleanor replied softly. "And to think, I almost didn't send that letter, afraid you'd reject me when you saw I was older than my photograph." Adam smiled, wrapping his free arm around her shoulders to draw her closer. "Beauty deepens with every year, Eleanor. Like the rings of a tree, like good wine, like the bonds between people who truly see and value each other." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I wouldn't trade the woman you are now for any younger version." As they approached the ranch, the familiar shape of the house silhouetted against the sunset sky, Eleanor felt a profound sense of homecoming. Not just to a place, but to a person, to a life she had never imagined finding when she stepped onto that stagecoach in Boston. That night, as husband and wife, they discovered each other anew, not as the people they had pretended to be in photographs or letters, but as they truly were. Adam's hands, strong from years of ranch work, proved surprisingly gentle as they explored Eleanor's body. His kisses, tentative at first, grew more confident as she responded with equal passion. For Eleanor, who had resigned herself to spinsterhood years ago, the physical expression of their love was a revelation, a joining that felt as natural and right as their partnership in all other ways. In Adam's arms, the years that had worried her so much fell away. She was simply a woman loving and being loved by her husband, her age nothing more than a measure of the life experiences that had shaped her into the person he cherished. Afterward, lying in the quiet darkness with Adam's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Eleanor felt a deep contentment that went beyond physical satisfaction. This was what she had secretly longed for all those lonely years in Boston: not just a husband or security, but a true partner who valued her mind as well as her heart, who saw her clearly and loved what he saw. "What are you thinking?" Adam murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Eleanor smiled in the darkness. "That sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as disappointments." "How so?" "If the school in Boston hadn't closed, if my circumstances hadn't become so difficult, I never would have answered your advertisement, never would have found you." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at his face, barely visible in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Sometimes what seems like an ending is really a beginning." Adam reached up to touch her cheek tenderly. "Wisest woman I know, and don't you forget it," Eleanor teased, settling back against his chest. Adam's chuckle rumbled beneath her ear. "Never. Though I might need reminding from time to time when I'm being stubborn about ranch matters. I'll be happy to provide those reminders, Mr. Holcomb." "I'm counting on it, Mrs. Holcomb." In the days and weeks that followed, Eleanor and Adam settled into the rhythms of married life with a naturalness that surprised them both. Eleanor took over the household management completely, bringing order and comfort to spaces that had been merely functional before. The garden expanded under her care, now featuring not just vegetables but the flowers Adam had ordered before her arrival, blooming in vibrant splashes of color against the golden California landscape. True to his word, Adam supported Eleanor when the opportunity arose for her to teach at the Chico school 3 days a week. Mr. Peterson, overwhelmed by the growing number of students, was grateful for her experience and credentials. The arrangement allowed Eleanor to contribute to their household income while still maintaining the ranch home she had come to love. On the days she taught, Adam would drive her into town in the morning and pick her up in the afternoon, using the trips to handle ranch business in Chico. Those drives became cherished time-together opportunities to discuss their days, make plans for the ranch's future, or simply enjoy each other's company away from the demands of their work. By the time winter came, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain to the Sacramento Valley, Eleanor felt as if she had always lived at Holcomb Ranch. The community had embraced her completely. She was now a regular at the Women's Quilting Circle, had helped organize the Harvest Festival at the church, and had even begun a small lending library from her personal collection of books, which neighbors were welcome to borrow when they visited. Christmas that year was especially meaningful, their first as husband and wife. Adam surprised Eleanor with a proper writing desk for their bedroom, crafted by his own hands in secret hours at the bunkhouse. Eleanor gave Adam a fine leather-bound journal for recording ranch business, along with a fountain pen ordered specially from San Francisco. "For a man who appreciates words," she told him as he admired the gift. As winter turned to spring, and spring blossomed into summer, their happiness only deepened. The ranch prospered under their joint management, Adam's practical knowledge of cattle and horses, complemented by Eleanor's meticulous record-keeping and budget planning. Together, they made decisions about expanding certain operations, trying new crops in the fields, hiring an additional hand when the workload increased. In late summer, just as they were approaching their first anniversary, Eleanor discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled them both with joy and some trepidation. Eleanor was now 31, older than most first-time mothers in their community. "Are you worried?" Adam asked as they sat on their porch one evening, his hand resting protectively over hers on her still flat stomach. "A little," Eleanor admitted. "But my mother had my brother at 35 with no complications, and Dr. Johnson says I'm in excellent health." She turned to look at her husband, love swelling in her heart at the concern in his eyes. "Besides, I have you. That makes all the difference." Adam's expression softened. "Always, Eleanor. Whatever comes, we face it together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, with Eleanor maintaining her teaching schedule through the fall term before taking leave for the winter months. The women of Chico rallied around her, sharing advice, bringing gifts of handmade baby clothes and blankets, offering practical help with household tasks as her condition advanced. On a cold, clear February morning in 1880, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy son, James Samuel Holcomb, named for Adam's father and his closest friend. The labor had been long but uncomplicated, with Martha Williams and the doctor's wife attending alongside Dr. Johnson himself. When Adam was finally allowed into the bedroom to meet his son, the expression on his face was one Eleanor knew she would remember until her dying day: wonder, love, and profound gratitude all mingled together. "He's perfect," Adam whispered, carefully taking the swaddled infant from Eleanor's arms. "Look at those hands, he'll be a rancher for sure. Or perhaps a scholar," Eleanor suggested with a tired smile. "He kept me awake many nights kicking when I was reading aloud." Adam laughed softly, sitting on the edge of the bed beside her. "Either way, He's the luckiest boy in California to have you for his mother." He leaned down to kiss her forehead reverently. "Thank you, Eleanor, for our son, for everything." Life changed again with James's arrival, nights broken by feedings, days restructured around the needs of an infant. But the joy he brought far outweighed the challenges. Adam proved to be a devoted father, willing to walk the floor with a fussy baby so Eleanor could rest, insisting on his fair share of childcare despite the raised eyebrows of some of the older men in the community. "My son should know his father," he said simply when Samuel once remarked on how much time he spent with the baby. "And my wife deserves a partner, not just a provider." By the time James was toddling around the ranch house on sturdy legs, Eleanor was expecting their second child. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect, or perhaps because James kept her so active that the usual discomfort seemed less bothersome. In the spring of 1882, Catherine Martha Holcomb joined the family, a beautiful girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's auburn hair. Adam was as smitten with his daughter as he had been with his son, declaring her the prettiest thing in California and spending hours simply watching her sleep in the cradle he had crafted for James and now repainted for her use. The years that followed brought both joy and challenges. The ranch continued to prosper, allowing Adam to finally purchase the northern grazing land he had long wanted. Eleanor's position at the school expanded as Chico grew, eventually leading to her appointment as headmistress when Mr. Peterson moved on to a position in Sacramento. James grew into a thoughtful, intelligent boy who loved books as much as he loved helping his father with the ranch work. Catherine, or Cat as everyone called her, was a spirited child with her mother's quick mind and her father's easy charm. When Eleanor gave birth to their third child, another boy named Thomas, just before her 38th birthday, their family felt complete. Through it all, Eleanor and Adam's love only deepened, enriched by shared experiences and challenges overcome together. There were difficult times, of course, a serious drought that threatened the ranch, a winter illness that left James hovering between life and death for frightening days, disagreements about how to manage their growing responsibilities. But the foundation they had built in those first weeks together proved strong enough to weather any storm. They remained partners in every sense, consulting each other on important decisions, supporting each other's ambitions, finding joy in simple daily moments together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adam surprised Eleanor with a trip to San Francisco, their first real vacation since their marriage. Samuel and his wife, he had married a widow from a neighboring ranch 5 years earlier, stayed at the house to care for the children and oversee the ranch operations. Standing on the balcony of their hotel room, overlooking the busy San Francisco harbor, Eleanor felt a wave of gratitude for the life they had built together. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Holcomb," Adam said, coming to stand behind her, his arms encircling her waist. Eleanor leaned back against his chest, still solid and strong at 44. "I was thinking about that photograph I sent you, the one that showed a much younger woman." Adam chuckled, his breath warm against her hair. "I haven't thought about that in years." "No." Eleanor turned in his arms to face him. At 40, she now had more silver than auburn in her hair, and the lines around her eyes had deepened with a decade of California sun and wind. But Adam looked at her with the same admiration and desire he had shown on their wedding day. "The woman in that photograph was a stranger," Adam said, his hands coming up to frame her face. "The woman I fell in love with, the one I grow more in love with every day, is right here. Every line, every silver hair, every laugh and worry and joy we've shared, that's the beauty that matters." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears of happiness. How did I get so lucky? I ask myself the same question every morning when I wake up beside you. Adam kissed her tenderly. Happy anniversary, Eleanor. Happy anniversary, my love. Later that night, as they lay together in the unfamiliar but luxurious hotel bed, Eleanor thought about the incredible journey that had brought her here, from a desperate teacher sending a misleading photograph to a mail-order groom, to a fulfilled woman with a loving husband, 3 beautiful children, and a life richer than she could have imagined. All because Adam Holcomb had looked beyond a photograph to see the woman she truly was, had valued the beauty that deepens with every year of life fully lived. All because she had found the courage to step off that stagecoach and face him honestly, despite her fears of rejection. As she drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, Eleanor offered a silent prayer of gratitude for second chances, for unexpected beginnings, and for the kind of love that sees beyond surfaces to the heart that matters most. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that the best chapters of their story were still being written, day by day, year by year, in the life they continued to build together.